What's going on, producers? Let's talk about 5 jazz chords that sound absolutely perfect in modern productions. Each one of these chords is juicy, it's soulful, it's buttery, and it gives that stank face vibe. Make sure you stay tuned for the 5th one because it's actually a quintessential jazz chord progression that just works perfectly for modern productions. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is BruceBeats. I'm a multi-instrumentalist producer, credits with Rapsody, Major 7, Netflix, McDonald's, ESPN, and way more. And my goal with this channel is to help you play piano specifically for music production. Not to be a virtuoso, not to read sheet music, or learning things that don't apply to playing dope keys to make dope records. If that sounds good to you, hit that like and subscribe button, and let's get into it. Chord number 1 is the altered chord. If you've been following me for some time, probably heard me play this chord a million times because it's one of my favorite. It just sounds so good. And you could also resolve that to major. Like, both ways just sound really awesome. So this is a perfect chord to use whenever you want that juicy tension, whether you're playing a major or whether you're playing a minor. It just has this like unique spice to it that no other chord has. And how we want to use this chord is the 5 chord going back to 1. So let's say I'm in the key of A minor here, and I count up 5 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I make a major chord here. This is now my 5 chord, and what I can do is I can put a 7 on it, which makes it a dominant chord. Boom. And so this has an inherent tension that brings you back to that 1, E7, going into A minor, 5 to 1. And what I can do with this 5 chord is I can dress it up and I can make it an altered chord, which basically means adding the sharp 9 and the sharp 5. But we don't necessarily need to know what all of that is. I would actually just rather you look at this shape right here, understand this shape and put it over this bass note, and then resolve that to the A minor. This shape comes from the grip system, which is something I learned at the University of Miami. If you want some more info on that, I have a free masterclass on the grip system below. You can check that with the link in the description. But for now, just know that we have this shape over a single bass note, and then that gives us this. So when we write that out, we can either write it as E7 alt, which is kind of shorthand, or as you see it's signified here, E7 sharp 9 sharp 5, because the 9th and the 5th are sharped in this to bring it home. But don't worry about all of that stuff. You can literally just cop these voicings and follow along with me. So as an example of how we could use this alter chord, we could say, I found another place to put it. And that's just the same alter chord, just in another key. We can see it says F sharp 7, sharp 9, sharp 5. So that's just another altered chord and another place to put it. So there you go. You can just cop this chord progression and use it in your productions if you like it. Chord number 2 is the minor 11 chord. Again, one of my favorite chords ever. And if you've been following me for a little bit, you hear me play this guy all the time. It just has such a smooth vibe to it. So how do we get this chord in the first place? Well, probably the easiest way to build this chord is if, again, we were in A minor, right? And I have my 1, 3, and my 5. If I just keep this pattern of play 1, skip 1, play 1, skip 1, play 1, following that A minor scale, skip 1, play 1 for the 7, skip 1, play 1 for the 9, skip 1, play 1 for the 11, I have a beautiful minor 11 sound. And this is just wonderful, even when you just play it like this. Like, that just sounds so good. Imagine some lo-fi on that.
Right? It just sounds freaking awesome.
So we see that we can actually just play it like that, and it sounds really great. One of my favorite ways to play this voicing, let's say we were in E minor. If I were to play the 1, 2, 3, and 4 of E minor, I skip the 5 and the 6, and I play the 7. We get this really nice voicing, and if I take this E and drop it down an octave, woo! Like, that's such a nice voicing. And it's also a really nice one that we could take up the piano as well, or even down, which I've talked about in another video as well. It's such a versatile voicing. And last but not least, the infamous Tyrone by Erykah Badu is basically built off of almost all minor 11 chords. So if we check this one out, I think I better go down. Right, we could play that first one, second one, third one, Beautiful stuff. Chord number 3 is the 2 chord played as a dominant 9 chord.
Is a dominant 9 chord.
So for those of you who don't know what this symbol is, this is basically a Roman numeral for 2. And writing chords out in Roman numerals is actually really handy because instead of writing just the number 2, I don't know if that's major or minor or what that means. But if I write it out in Roman numerals, if I write the 2 like this, that tells me it's major. If I write the 2 like this, that tells me it's minor. If I were to play a 1-2-5-1 progression in the key of B major, I would typically have B, C sharp minor 7, F sharp 7, and then back to B. So that would give us something like this. Which sounds really lovely. But when I make that 2 a dominant 7 chord or a dominant 9, it just depends what numbers I want to put in there. Instead of saying, right, which sounds great, we can say, and then we get some extra voice leading coming back into this beat. Because instead of, which is the note that hangs there, when we make that a dominant 2, then when we go into the F sharp, finally back to me. So we get some more interesting voice leading when we make that to a dominant chord. Chord number 4 is a major 13 sharp 11.
Bruh.
Don't worry, I'm going to show you a really easy way to play it, but that is the name of the chord. Here's how it sounds. See how this is much brighter? I personally love that sound. I love ending on that chord, but that can feel a little bit striking. So there's actually somewhere we can put it that makes it a little bit more palatable, especially for modern production, when we don't want to be too fancy and throw the listener off, but we do want to inject that musicality. Flat 2 going to 1. What the heck does that mean? So let's say I'm in the key of C major. If I find my 2 chord, which is D, if I flat this guy, I have D flat. And if I make this a major 13 sharp 11, then I have this, and I can bring that to 1. So it's like D flat going to C. So using this in the middle of a progression, we wouldn't want to use it all the time, but let's say we have something fairly simple, like in the key of C, we're just, playing all these chords. We can just sneak it in there one time, you know what I mean? Here and there, we don't want to overdo it. And we get some lovely vibes. So the easy way to play this, guys, instead of thinking,
Oh my god, what's the 13? What's the sharp 11? What's the major 7?
we could actually just play 2 over 1. So if I'm in the key of C, and then I play a D chord on top of that, this gives me that sound. So I'm playing a C chord and a D chord at the same time. So I could take this to any other key. So if we look at what I just did here, I was in the key of D flat. In the key of D flat, the 2 is E flat. So I play a 2 on top of that, and I threw a major 7 here in the middle, just so I could, really, really fill that up. We get that chord, and it sounds lovely. If I want to do this in the key of F, I have F. 2 of F is G. Play G major, and then I have this wonderful sound that I can just stack on top. And last but not least, number 5, we have our minor 2-5-1. This is not a chord, this is an entire chord progression, but the reason I wanted to put this in here is because number 1, it's very quintessential to jazz music, and it just works perfectly for all modern genres. And number 2, we can take a lot of the techniques that we just learned in those individual chords, and we can use them in this chord progression. So a typical minor 2-5-1 is gonna sound like this. Really cool, right? I could just make a banger out of that. But what if we use some of those chords that we just used? So for that 5 chord, let's go ahead and play that altered chord that we learned earlier. And for the 1 chord, what if we played that minor 11 chord that we learned earlier? Let's see what that would sound like. That's kind of smooth. One of the other things you could do with a minor 2-5-1 that I personally love is you can make that last one a major. So, let's say we're doing that same thing. You have a couple repetitions of this in your track, sounds cool, maybe somebody's rapping over it or something, out of nowhere, you just say, you just hit him with that major vibe, that pretty major vibe, and it just brings some like life and color to it. As a matter of fact, Zach Barnes' Thy Piece uses this progression in a very lovely way. So we're in the key of B major here, and what he does is he does a 2-5-1 into the A flat minor. And so if we were coming here, we would have B flat, E flat, A flat. And again, all I'm doing here, guys, is using the grip system. If you notice, I have a single bass note, 4-note shape, single bass note, 4-note shape, single bass note, 4-note shape. It just makes all this stuff that feels complex so much easier. So if you want to learn that system, I got a free class for you. Just click the link in the description below. That said, here's how he uses it in his hymn. Ready? There it goes. It was a little quick. Now he uses some shell voicings around this, and a shell voicing is just a smaller version of the chords. So he doesn't necessarily say da 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 dee 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 da. He doesn't play the chords full out. He more so says, he just kind of gives you like the main ingredients here. Right? Just gives you the main ingredients. But we can still hear that minor 2-5-1 sound in it. It sounds beautiful. I mean, this works for R&B, it works for lo-fi, it works for jazz, it works for hip-hop jazz. Any form of like modern soulful stuff, this is gonna be your go-to guy. So there you have it, the 5 jazz chords that sound super smooth in all modern productions. Number 1, that altered dominant. Number 2, that minor 11. Number 3, that dominant 2 chord. Love that. Number 4, we have the major 13 sharp 11 chord, which is much easier to think about it as a 2/1. And like I said before, I love to use this on the endings. Just gives it some color, right? Instead of going, which is very final. And again, I'm just playing D flat major triads, just kind of spread out over the piano, but ending B. And then we get that really nice color. So it's like B on the bottom, D flat on the top. And once again, the minor 2-5-1, which kind of gives you just this really cool vibe. I just did it there in the key of E flat. I'd highly recommend getting it down in the different keys so you can understand what it feels like. Quick practical tip, if this is new to you, trying to do all of this at once is not the way you want to go about it. That's gonna be too much for your brain, you're gonna feel overwhelmed, and you're gonna get nothing done. Pick one of these, just one, not even 2, just pick one that you really like and start taking it through the different keys. Start to feel comfortable with it, be patient with yourself, take it very slowly, and focus on playing it cleanly and in time rather than fast and sloppy. Because if you play it fast and sloppy, you're just gonna get a half-ass, and then when you go to produce it in your DAW, when you go to actually lay it down, you're gonna have to click in chord by chord by chord, and not only does that take a long time, it really hurts your ego when you have to do that. But when you exercise patience when you practice, and you take it as slow as you need to play it cleanly and in time, very quickly it becomes comfortable. And then when you go to lay it down in your DAW, you can actually lay down the entire chord progression at once with feeling and groove, rather than having to plug it in the piano roll or just do one chord at a time. I'd love to know, which of these 5 is your favorite? Which of these 5 are you going to use in your productions? Let me know in the comments below. Just type 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. If you're liking this content, like and subscribe for more. I upload 3 videos a week,
So you don't want to miss out on this dope shit.
My name is Bruce Beats. I'll see you on the next one. Peace!